I would like to invite our board vice chair, Dr. Linwood Heyman, to open us up with a practice.
Thank you, Sister Michelle. Good evening, good day, depending on where you are, everyone. It is so good to be sharing space with you all once again. We were able to share space, was it last week now? Time has been flying by so quickly that, it's very easy for me to become temporarily displaced, especially while sitting in my office all day and all night. So the practice that I want to introduce to us at this time is one of my favorite invigorating practices, right? So this isn't going to be something where we're sitting down, although you can do it while sitting down. So in the spirit of Turkey Day being next week, I'm going to offer or ask you all to make two little pecking hands like this and say, hello, hello. You don't have to talk to them. It's hard to turn the dad thing off. And I'm gonna take my glasses off for this. What I want to offer us is a light pecking exercise, and it goes something like this: just a gentle, starting at the top of our heads, just a gentle tapping on the temples, around the forehead. Don't forget to get around the back of your head and around your neck, under your ears, under your jaw. I have to knock. I can't get my, oh, there it is. Have to do one peck at a time. Gently on your eyes, and your cheeks. And then slowly begin to move to your shoulders. Into your upper pectorals. And then around your chest. And before I stand up, I'm going to stop the pecking and brush off all of that tension that the pecking broke up. I like to call this a type of self-excavation. You're tapping off the sediment of the day, tapping off all of the things that may have settled on us today. Maybe we had some not so entertaining meetings. Maybe we had interactions with some not so pleasant people. And we just want to, after we tap it, we want to brush off what we tapped. And so now I'll stand up. And if you can do the same, I would highly recommend you do that. And similarly, just begin to tap around. Tap around your waist and your thighs. I always like tapping my booty after sitting down so much. And I can only reach my lower back with the tapping. But to then go down your legs. And you might want to, I'm lifting my leg just to illustrate, but you might even want to double up rather than only doing one. And lastly, don't forget to brush it off. And as we come back to our seats, I invite you to just feel the invigoration of the excavation. The invigoration of the excavation. We have excavated, we've made some space. We've made space with each other and for each other, and now we are settling in for what is sure to be a fantastic and engaging conversation. Much love to you all. May you all be well.
Thank you so very much for that. Let's give it up for Brother Linwood. Yes, yes. I needed that. Little tapping and brushing it off. Bring it to the surface and brush it off. I love it. Well, friends, welcome to this conversation. It is so wonderful to have you here. It is an honor and a joy to introduce Dr. David Robinson Morris to some of you and to reintroduce him to others. We're going to move into our dialogue. So if you haven't had a chance to read his bio yet, allow me just a few moments to share some of his wonderful accomplishments. Dr. Robinson Morris is the author of Ubuntu and Buddhism in Higher Education, an Ontological Rethinking, published by Routledge in 2018. As a scholar, Dr. Robinson Morris's work centers on deepening our understanding of what it means to be a human being through the Philosopraxis of Ubuntu and socially engaged Buddhism. Did I get it? Did I get it eventually? The intertwining of these philosophies, he believes, promotes deep dialogical engagement and the interaction with humanity and the more than human nature and spirit to transform our understanding of what we are not yet but must become. He is the founder and chief, here we go again, wish me luck, Reimaginelutionary and the Reimaginelution LLC, a strategic consulting firm working at the intersections of imagination, policy, practice, and prophetic hope to radically reimagine diversity, education, and inclusion toward racial justice and systemic transformation by engendering freedom of the human spirit and catalyzing the power of the imagination to reweave organizations, systems, and the world for collective healing and liberation. You can review the rest of his outstanding bio on the Contemplative Mind website. But this is my first question. Who are you, Dr. David Robinson Morris?
Thank you, Michelle. What a question, right? Who am I becoming, right? Is probably a more poignant and a question that really gets to the root of it. I am the son of Shalonda and David. I'm the grandson of Joanne and Charles. I'm the great-grandson of Josephine, Charles, Annabelle, and Emile, and the list goes on and on and on, right? I am a child of my people, most importantly. I am originally from Galveston, Texas, little island, very small town, in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico, off the coast of Texas. And you know, that upbringing afforded me the ability to explore myself and to explore my imagination, and to really, it helped me to develop this muscle to push against what was considered normal. Growing up in small town Texas, I am 6'4". I'm just as wide, I tell people. I've played football my whole life. And at a certain point, I said, I don't want to do this anymore. I really would like to go read. And my mother, who is no longer with us, but who happened to be a coach, as what it was my grandfather, said, in this family, you play sports. You don't need to go read anything, right? Reading is great, do it on the weekend, but you play sports in this family. By happenstance, my freshman year of high school, I broke my knee in 3 places at spring training, which ended my football career, thank whatever gods may be. But that was over, and I was no longer pressured into that part of my life, right? and I was free to explore other things. That really took me into, I'm a Black Catholic. I was raised in the first Black Catholic church in the state of Texas, the oldest Black Catholic church in the state of Texas, Holy Rosary Parish in Galveston. And I started to discern in my sophomore year of high school a vocation to the priesthood, if you can believe it. And I'm saying that to Michelle because she knows I have a potty mouth and it's really bad. But for 2 years, explored this vocation with the support of my family most of the time, and entered the seminary a month after my 18th birthday in New Orleans. Now, my mother, in her wisdom, would not walk into that seminary, and she told me at the door of the seminary, I'm not going in, I'm not helping you take your stuff in. You are too rebellious to leave my house and to enter somebody else's. And I've told you this. Go to college, or this is still something you'd like to do, then come back and do it. But I'll see you at home in 3 months. And I thought, oh, how mean is she? And I tell people I stayed 3 months and a week just to spite her. But she was right? So I say all that to say that I'm a person who explores lots of things. I'm curious about many things. I've had many, many lives in this very short life. And I'm grateful to my parents, to my mother, who's now in the land of the ancestors, and to my great-grandmother, who's also in the land of the ancestors, who allowed me the room, and the spaciousness to explore. But who I am, I'm still becoming. So I don't know, Michelle. We're gonna have to, look, I want to get to the point where Mirabai Bush is at 82 and writing her memoir, and then I'll tell you who I am. Right?
I hear you. Well, I have a long list of questions, and you saw some of them. David and I spoke earlier today, and I asked him some other questions, and then he started to respond, and then I started to lean back and just go into like Oprah mode. And I was like, wait, we're doing the town hall. We can't do that now. We've got to wait till this evening. But it has just been so delightful and so rich spending time with David. And this is just virtually, right? I can't wait till we have a big CMind community trip down to New Orleans. But it has been so wonderful getting to know you. I'd like to ask, how did you come to know CMind? I'm going to combine two questions. And I know that you've only been on the job for 2 weeks and 3 days, but you're an extraordinary leader and a reimaginutionary. So I'd like to ask, what is your vision for CMind at this point?
Yeah. So the first question, I came to CMind at Xavier. I was teaching and working at Xavier University of Louisiana. And one of our staff members, Bart Everson, who's also done some programs for CMind, pulled together and had been pulling together a group of contemplative faculty and staff. And I got a phone call out of the blue one day from Bart, who said, hey, we've met a couple times. We have this group coming up. You need to apply. We're going to be exploring contemplative pedagogy at Xavier. We need you. And I said, my first response was, what the hell is a contemplative practice, right? And I think that's a lot of people's first response, right? And I said, well, Bart, I'm not interested in sitting a pillow. I don't want to meditate with you. I'm fine. I pray my rosary every morning. I'm good, right? You go deal with your own thing. And he said, come to one meeting. Went to one meeting and I was hooked, right? We were talking about what I studied. We were talking about different ways of being and knowing, right? And bringing people along and helping them to reimagine a life that is not yet. And so I thought, is this what this contemplative thing is really about? And I stuck with that group for a whole year. And then it was time for a new class, and I would go back periodically to give talks. But that's how I came to CMind. He introduced me to CMind. He'd gone to a summer session with a group of faculty, and he came back, started a group on our campus, and that group is still growing strong today. And each year, we have 20 people who go through that year-long program at Xavier, this little Black Catholic institution in New Orleans that most people don't know about, right? So that's how I came to CMind, through the wisdom of Bart Everson. And I'm very grateful for him. You know, my vision for CMind, this is something we've gone back and forth over, and the staff and I have gone back and forth over. And I think my vision is not so different from the founding vision of the organization, right? I had a really great conversation with Mirabai Bush, one of my first conversations, because I wanted to understand their motives as founders in creating this community, right? And Mirabai was very clear that the dream for CMind was quite simple. Right? It was to inform people about the transformative power of contemplative practices and to love everyone and to serve everyone, right? That was the dream. That was the central vision for CMind. Again, my vision is quite similar. In this moment of racial reckoning, right? We cannot get out of the socio-political. Our very being is political. I am a Black man speaking to you in the South. You don't get any more political than that in this country, right? In this body. In this moment of racial reckoning, though, we need to be able to speak truth to power. We need to be able to love everyone and to serve everyone. And that love is not sentimentality or mush, as Maya Angelou would say, but love is hard stuff. It's discipline, it's recognition, it's respect, it's those hard things, right? And that love and service in this moment looks very different from how it looked in Mirabai's moment, right? In this moment, it looks like, love looks like justice, right? Justice is just love showing itself in public, we know that. It looks like equity, which is a process, a practice, and a tangible outcome, right? So this isn't a moment where we can only sit our pillows, where we can only participate in practice, but we have to get our hands and feet and heads and hearts involved in transforming the world, right? That's part of that vision for what I hope we are to do. A good deal of our work has focused in higher education, right? And as a professor, as a person who worked in administration at an institution, higher education institutions are in trouble. They are in trouble. And what we know about systems and institutions is that they cannot contain the human spirit. But they are trying to, which means they are being oppressive. So they have to transform, right? Those institutions have to transform. And I think we're the people to help them transform. While they're focused on policy and practice, which are important, right? And on diversifying the faculty and staff and all of those good things, we have to be focused on transforming the people who will inhabit the institutions, right? And we have to be focused on helping the institution, which has being, ready itself for diversification, for justice, for equity. You know, Michelle, you and I had this exchange a couple of weeks ago, and I said, I was driving in the car, and what came to mind was a quote by Martin Luther King Jr., who, talking about integration, said, "I fear we are integrating our people into a burning building." And I think that same thought when it comes to this huge move, not that it's a bad move, but a huge move to diversify predominantly white institutions. We are putting our people in harm's way in institutions that are not ready for their brilliance, for their boldness, right? And who do not recognize difference as generative. So what's going to happen is that you're going to have a whole lot of faculty and staff who are hurt, who are going to hurt students, who are going to go out into the world and create policy that hurts other people. It's a trickle effect. The institutions are not ready to do what they think they're ready to do. They have not readied themselves. So part of our goal for the next year, for the next couple of years, really is about transforming people, transforming institutions that will then transform institutional practices, right? So my vision, right? It's a vision that is always becoming and it's coming together. So work with me here, follow along with me. My vision is that we become an organization that practices radical love, right? That radiates radical love to catalyze a revolutionary becoming. You know, I named my company Reimagilutionary because one, we need a revolution, right? The revolutions can only begin if you can imagine something that's outside of what has already been thought. And what I know about oppressive systems is that the first thing that it shuts down is a people's imagination, right? This is why when, during enslavement, you were not allowed to read. Education opened up the imagination and helped you to think outside of what was possible, right? So this is what we have to do. My vision is that we speak and live out our role as well as folks who understand that CMind is a well, right? A well that folks come to drink from when they need to be replenished, when they're tired from doing the work of equity and justice, the real work of equity and justice in the world. And that we not only be the well, but we're also the water that hydrates people thirsty for transformation, right? For new revolutionary becomings outside, again, of what has already been thought. And we do this, you and I were talking about this today. And so, well, what do we call this thing, David? And we came up with radical, compassionate inclusivity, right? That's what we want folks to practice, where practice becomes a means of shoring people up, of strengthening people, of giving them the fortitude and the courage to do the hard work, to manifest that hard work into hand work and footwork, rooted in justice and always viewed through a lens of equity, with healing always in mind.
With healing always in mind. Radical love, radical inclusive compassion, love in action, justice. I've got a question that's not on my script.
Go ahead.
What do you say, or how do you respond to people who may have concern that CMind will become exclusionary? And this is what I mean. Our board president is Black. Our board chair is Black. Our co-chair is Black. Our executive director is now Black. I mean, speaking truth to power and being transparent. Some people may feel CMind may not be for me anymore if I am not Black, if I do not have that identity. I just want to put it out there, you know. How do you respond to that concern that some may have?
Yeah. I would respond to that by saying, then you don't know the hospitality of Blackness, right? That even if the faces around the table don't look like yours, then you don't understand that as a people, we know what it feels like to be excluded. And so we do our darndest to include, right? No matter how you look, no matter what walk of life you come from, I think as a people, we are extremely hospitable, even when we shouldn't be, right? And so what I would say is that if you are questioning your place within this organization because the complexion of the leadership has changed, then you need to go back and do some more work, right? There's some sore spots there that are unhealed, that are untouched, that you have not confronted, right? So stick with us. We'll help you confront those. Trust me. We're going to help you confront them. But that should not be a hindrance. The work that we do is hard work, it's work of transformation, and it's for everyone.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I have just a few more questions, and I promise everyone we're going to leave some space so that you can ask your own questions. I promise that will do that. You know, I think wanting to have this town hall, which was your idea, is quite indicative of the kind of leader that you are. So would you say a bit more about that? You know, what kind of leader are you? What is your leadership philosophy or style, if you will?
Yeah. You know, that's a good, I love this question. And my response is always the same. You should ask the people that I lead. Right. So what I will tell you is that I am deeply we oriented. Right. There is no hierarchical structure. We said if we were together, we'd be in a circle and having a conversation. Right. You cannot lead alone. And if you do, you won't go very far. Right. This leadership is a communal endeavor. And that's how I approach it. Right. All voices being equal, we all have a say. Now, there are some operational realities that come along with that. Right, that we don't live in a utopia. We live in this world that operates in a certain way. And so in certain situations, the buck does stop with me. And I take on the responsibility, either the blessing of that or the burden of that, right? But everyone has their say. And everyone should be heard and feel like they are heard and they are seen. That's how I endeavor to lead. Now, do I always live up to that? I don't think so, right? Because, you know, I'm not perfect yet, and I won't ever be in this life, right? But that's the goal, and the goal is to make sure that people know that they are seen, heard, that they matter, and that they belong here with us. Which is exactly why we're having this town hall tonight, right? It is, I also deeply believe in equity, and equity is a process and an outcome. And as a researcher, if I were to go into a community to do equitable research, right, I would be asking those participants what they need, not what I think they need. And that's what this town hall is about.
Well, in the spirit of that, I'm going to actually open the floor for questions from our community now. And I'll come back with a few more at the end if we have time. We'll be organic like that. So Carrie, I believe, is managing the raise hand feature. Does anyone have a question for Dr. David Robinson Morris at this point, or a comment? The chat is open. You can raise your hand or you can Vita. And then Janice, I see.
Okay, thanks. Welcome, David.
Thank you.
I loved your last response, and I just wonder if you have thoughts about how you will get information from the CMind community as to what people want, how they, how they're seeing the organization and what they need and that kind of thing.
So we're going to work on sending out a survey, but this is also the opportunity, right? As the staff at CMind knows and as the board knows, I believe in being completely honest, which is a fault at times, right? And complete transparency. And so this is our forum, right? And if there are things that we want to talk about or need to talk about, raise those in this forum. You can always email me, david@contemplativemind.org, if you don't want to talk about those in that way. And we can have a one-on-one conversation. I love those. Now, you're going to be on the phone with me or on Zoom with me for an hour and a half. So you should just plan for that because I can talk. And we're going to get to know each other really well. But this is our forum, right? And our forum will go out by the end of the week for folks to be able to voice their concerns in that way, if they're more comfortable.
Hi, David. This is Janice Jackson, and I want to say hi to Michelle. It's great to see you, my dear. I've come to know CMind through Michelle. She was in a leadership program that I work on. And I'm grateful to be able to be here today and to hear someone who was Roman Catholic. I'm Roman Catholic.
Yay.
I have a master's degree from Xavier in the Institute for Black Catholic Studies.
Yeah, yes.
And to be able to combine the two worlds to talk about deep, systemic, transformative change is just a blessing to hear today. Because sometimes I think I'm crazy, because, I went to a Jesuit institution as an undergrad. We talked about justice all the time, but somehow or another, it was, excuse me to anyone on the call who was white, it was very white. And it was like, it did not include often the ways we see our work in the world as African Americans. So I appreciate hearing your words today. And good to see you, Michelle and Velma.
Thank you for that, Janice. And it's always great to meet someone who went through the Institute. The Institute director was here at the house the other night. We're great friends, and I love the Institute. And I often give talks with them about the church. The Catholic Church, for as much as I love it, is a white supremacist organization. And so I give this talk often. And someone challenged me the other day, and they said, well, how? And I said, well, a church that images God as a white man, right? That images all of the angels as white. A church that images all the saints as white, when we know that wasn't the case, is a white supremacist organization. And we know that institutions in and of themselves are hell-bent on their own survival at any cost. And so to the church, so to higher education, so to any institution, right? And none of those institutions are able, like I said earlier, to hold the human spirit. None of them. And they're grappling with that and trying to find ways to oppress that spirit, right? And that's where we come in and helping to push against that oppression.
Anyone else have questions or comments at this point? This is a community dialogue, and we welcome you. While you're thinking, I just want to acknowledge our board members who are here this evening and our former board members, Dave Levy and Jeff Ganung and Alberto Pulido, and I see a few others. Amy Pacino is here. Thank you so much for your service and your love of CMind. We do have some hands. Carrie, you're in charge of that part.
Okay, I saw Louis, then Ferdinand, then Jipong.
Hello, so I'm okay. Can you hear me? Thanks, David. I really appreciated your comments. Sorry, I haven't met you before. So I'm kind of located now more as an outsider scholar. So I'm kind of thinking through a lot of these questions from different perspectives. And one of the questions I have, and forgive me, I don't know your work really well, and maybe that answer is already in your being and your work, but I've been thinking a lot about hidden diversity. And I have, I'm wondering if you have any ideas about possibly including like members of underrepresented religious traditions. So I appreciate the kind of Catholic critique. That's some of my background as well, but also imagining ways of getting this diversity of contemplative practice and contemplative perspectives involved. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Yes, the short answer is all are welcome. I had a really great conversation with Alberto, who's on the line, one of our board members, where we talked about this, about including, we talked about diversity, right? And we talked about what that means. And his work looks at situated contemplation. from a regional perspective, from cultural perspectives, from different religious perspectives. All of those things will be taken into account. And in the coming year, there will be a project that focuses on that for CMind that he has agreed to lead for us. So I thank you for lifting that question, and I'm looking forward to you being a part of that project with us. So be on the lookout for something in March because it's coming. But yes, we're focused on it.
Hi, thank you so much for taking on this job, which I'm sure is it's a huge amount of work, and I really appreciate that. And thank you too for suggesting this town hall. I think this is lovely. I have two overlapping questions that sort of the point of departure is what you said about your journey towards CMind and the Association of Contemplative Mind in Higher Education. That it started with a local group at Xavier University on contemplative pedagogy. And I guess there aren't a whole lot of those. So my question one is, are there ways in which we could work on embedding the work that CMind and the Association for Contemplative Mind in Higher Education are doing on individual campuses? Could we have like campus chapters? I know on my own campus, there are a couple of individuals, but we don't really have like an organizational structure for bringing people together and bringing more people into the fold. And the same thing for professional organizations. I'm a member of a couple of them, and I think like the MLA has thousands of members and a bunch of interest groups, but I don't think there's a subsection on contemplative mind in, say, modern language stuff. So I was just wondering, this is an organizational question, whether it would be possible to have like satellite chapters of this organization that we integrate into the campuses and professional organizations. And the second one that goes with that is, you mentioned Mirabai Bush's vision, the founding visions for this. And I guess one of the visions, she's one of the founding saints, and as far as I understand, Arthur Zines was another one. And he was interested also in contemplative stuff as actually mode of inquiry that could be integrated also in social practices and stuff, but also into the research work of what academics do. And it seems that we don't have a whole lot of that. I have individual colleagues. I have a biologist on my campus who thinks, yes, he does, there is some more, some intersection there, but there are plenty of other people saying, I'm doing chemistry, I can meditate on the side, but that has nothing to do with my mode of inquiry. So are there any ways that we can develop this thing where we say, hey, look, the academic research wing also could really benefit in the kinds of approaches and the kind of results they get? Can we sort of develop that further? Thank you.
Yes, we can. And I'm hoping you're going to be a thought partner with us and helping to develop that, right? Some of that is, I feel like you've eavesdropped on some of our meetings because we've had this conversation because it's so needed. So the first answer around CMind embedded on campuses, yes. We were in a board meeting earlier in the week, and I said, my goal is to have a CMind at Georgia State, a CMind at Williams, right? To have us embedded in those campuses in real ways. So yes. Now we have to figure out the best mechanism and the best way to do that, to roll that out. The other piece around contemplative understandings as a mode of inquiry is critical. Right? And we have the Sables on the line who are managing our journal, and that will be bolstered over the next couple of years as well. But I'm going to need some help in reaching out to those people and bringing them into the fold to help me understand, help the board understand what it is they need to feel that they won't be ostracized when they put those modes of inquiry into practice, right? So I'm going to really be leaning on a number of you within this community for your thought partnership in getting that done. The other piece before we move on to our next question is, we talked about operational realities, right? And I believe in telling the truth, right? And so the truth is that a number of these things cannot happen without your financial support. I'm going to say that one more time. A number of these things cannot happen without your financial support, right? So if we were at a church, I'd be passing the basket. okay? The organization financially, I'm going to be completely honest, is in trouble. It is in trouble. Now, is it going to go away? No. But do we need your support? Yes. Do we need to build up a new cadre of programs to attract funding? Yes. Right? And so some of these things, like the CMind at every campus, I love that. Right? At this point, the operational reality is that that is not revenue generating. That's mission focused, right? It's mission centric. So that may be in year 3 of a 3-year plan, once we can build a budget to sustain that work. Okay. Just want to be upfront about that. Go ahead, Karen.
Hi, this is Shupong. Thank you. I'm sorry I can't turn on my camera because I'm in a very unphotogenic situation. So thank you so much, David, for holding this space. This is such an important conversation. I was part of the summer session, so that's how I have been introduced to your work, and I'm just so glad to have the opportunity to speak with you now. So I started to put some notes in the chat by way of asking my question. And what I wrote is, I always want to call attention to the ways that colonial academia whitewashes or universalizes cultures. I'm sometimes am uncomfortable with lumping all of these diverse practices into the umbrella of contemplative. I am Taiwanese. I was born in Taiwan, but grew up in the States, in the US, and I grew up with kind of being surrounded by the extraction of, practices that, I mean, I wouldn't have put the term contemplative to them when I was young, but, American Buddhism is white Buddhism, until fairly recently. And I didn't feel I had access to my own lineage because of white supremacy and assimilation. So my question is, how can we honor the very diverse cultures and lineages of what we're lumping together as contemplative practices, and not just honor these traditions, but really keep at the forefront a curiosity about the divergent political, social, cultural, economic context. I just feel so strongly that analysis and that context can't be lost, and that I love your generous spirit of welcoming everyone, and it fills my heart, and I want to be there. And I have that niggling, but what about what about cultural appropriation and all these ways that our many diverse lineages have been exploited and commercialized, commodified, and so that was a big, yeah. So I don't know if that's a clear question, but those are my concerns.
Thank you for that. Thank you for lifting that. Right. I think the first thing we do is that we lift the concern, right, and we bring it into the light. To say that this is happening, this has happened, this is obviously continuing to happen. And so how do we ask the question, how do we, right, honor the cultures and the backgrounds and experiences and the lineages, as you said, of of the various traditions, right? In my own work, I don't call it contemplative practice, right? I call it a philosophapraxis, a philosophical way of being, right? That marries philosophy, culture, and doing. Because the word contemplative has become injured, right? And I think it's Thich Nhat Hanh who says that sometimes words need healing, right? And the word contemplative needs to be healed. Right? Now, does that mean we go off and change our name? I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think we're going to change our name, but we can have this conversation around this word, the hurt it has caused, right? But also the generosity of what it has given some people. But I do think it's extremely important to lift up the cultures and the lineages and the different and diverging natures of these understandings, right? Now, I can't give you a rock solid, here's what we're going to do at CMind, right? Because we're going to get it wrong. But I want to invite you every time we do to call us out on it. It's the only way we get better, right? And perhaps that becomes another working group. You just got yourself some work with us to help us to make sure that we are lifting that up in a real way.
Thank you. Thank you all for your questions. I'm going to throw in a couple of my own, and then we will open it back up to the floor. It's 7:51. I want to be mindful of time. David, who needs to know about CMind? And who needs to work with us? How can we expand our network?
Yeah. My response in my head was very cheeky. And it was everybody and their mama, right? Needs to know about CMind, right? Because of its ability to help folks find a home within themselves. I was talking to, I shared a story with Michelle too earlier. I was talking to an old friend who was actually my 8th grade prom date from Galveston, who called me to help her do some diversity work in another area in wellness. And we got into this long conversation, and I said, you know, you went from Galveston to Los Angeles to San Francisco, and now you have been living in Mexico for half a decade. What's going on here? And she said, I had a really great therapist, and the therapist told me that my job was to find a home within myself. And I thought, what does it mean to find a home within yourself, right? And then I started thinking about our work here at CMind, right? That's what we help people do. We help people find a home within themselves, right? And home is for everybody. So we need, you know, my joy would be to have a number of college presidents and provosts sit in on a meeting with me and let me tell them about themselves so they can confront themselves, so they can then go back into the home within themselves and be different, right? The same with business leaders, the same with lawyers, the same with judges, right? City mayors and governors. All of those folks need to understand that there is a moment where we have to pause before we make a decision. But we have to be and settle into our bodies and to breathe before we make a decision that will change someone else's life. So CMind literally is for everyone, right? Now again, this first year, we have to focus on higher education because that's where we are right now. That's not where we will remain there for sure, but we will expand from there once we can shore up the operational realities of the business functions of the organization. But everyone is welcome. Everyone is welcome.
You know, you talked about predominantly white institutions not being ready for the genius, the brilliance, the resilience, and even just the bodies of Black and brown people, um, of queer people, of what have you. You know, I came through an HBCU, and we don't think much about diversity, equity, and inclusion work in those spaces. And I know you have some really strong thoughts about DEI work, but
Mhm.
you know, what about those schools that are not PWIs? You know, what is their work around being radically inclusive and compassionate? And do you see us working in those spaces as well?
Yes, yes, that's a great question. Yes, right. This is work about human understanding and about deepening our understanding of our shared humanity. Um, all institutions need that work, right? And just because someone exists within an HBCU doesn't mean that that work isn't there. Now, I come from Xavier, a conservative Black Catholic institution in New Orleans. We need it more than anybody in terms of being exclusive around other identities, inclusive around other identities. Xavier is an HBCU, but our faculty are 80% white. Our students are 90% Black, right? Like that blew me away my first day on campus. So we need it. We need it. We need it because there are different cultural contexts. There are international scholars who are on these campuses who don't understand this sort of American cultural context. All of that is needed. All of that is needed. And we need to help folks deepen their levels of compassion for one another and help them to understand that really humanity is a quality we owe one another. That's what this all comes down to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Are there any other questions or comments from the floor in these last few moments that we have left?
There are two thoughts in the chat that I would like to voice. Jupong says that Indigenous peoples and the travesty of residential schools is another story that she would really like to see CMind confront. And Janice offered that I would work with educators who are nurturing our children's hearts and spirits in these chaotic times.
Yeah, thank you for that, Janice. I would give a talk every year at LSU when I was a student to pre-service teachers. And they were largely white female teachers who typically went to private school, but were going to go teach in an urban setting. And my talk with them was, if you do not love the students you're about to go serve, don't go teach them. And it was just that simple. And I'd sit myself down and we would move on with the day. That was the talk, right? And they could ask questions, but yes, we have to go there.
I think the Sables have a question.
David, can you unmute David Sable?
Okay. Okay, sorry. I'm not sure how articulate I can be because there's so much that's sort of coming together, including being at what was originally a Jesuit university, now secular. But in terms of the, one of the questions, is it Jupong? Is that how you say it? It's been really interesting for me. I've been involved with creating dialogues, a series of dialogues, along with a lot of other work in working with Indigenous communities and organizations, and creating partnerships with universities, and bumping up against a lot of the hierarchy that we've been talking about in the structural systemic issues that are really, really embedded in deep, dark ways that are hard to, you know, bring out and even show themselves unconscious. But on the other hand, these dialogues, I've been working with just some extremely powerful Indigenous leaders and in a growing number of Indigenous scholars. But but they're all starting to bring in their own sense of spirituality, their own ceremonies, their own music as alternative ways of teaching, of knowing, of coming to know, multisensory. And the last dialogue was with four faculty and staff within the university to hear back, what is it like? What was it like for them to come up through the university as Indigenous people who now are teachers and now are considered quote unquote scholars? And what does that even mean to be a scholar at this point? But what I found with the contemplative practices, we talked about it, and some of them knew a bit, but using that word, even though it could be a gloomy word that, you know, absorbed or assimilated, I saw it go the other way, which is it gave sort of a pathway for students, for these people I work with, these particular groups of Indigenous scholars, to feel like they, you know, this was a body coming together of research of a powerful, diverse group of people that was bringing their voice and their ways of knowing into the university in a way that a lot of people said, this is great. And it gave them a strong platform. And the more we write, for instance, with the journal, the more that people are writing, the more we're showing these layers and layers and layers of long-term, longer and longer term, year after year, people using these practices, finding these results, and in a way that is gradually being accepted by the hierarchy in universities, and seeing the change in the ways people are starting to open to other ways of knowing, being, the arts. I mean, I'm so, I mean, it's such a, I just love doing learning. It's just been very powerful for me. So, and there's more interest in what this contemplative mind is. So I'm just saying this is a very powerful platform, I think, that opens up spaces within the university. The more we do, the more you do, all of us do, to invite that exploration and that reimagination, imagining, which is another word I want to explore with you someday, David, and exploring, imagining. It's coming into a lot of fields as a word, actually. I'm hearing it used more and more, imagining. But I just want to say that, and I feel very, that it is a very powerful platform to keep expanding, keep deepening. And the research part has been really giving people more and more foothold to say we should be doing this at our universities. Look at all the people out there, look at all the voices out there, look at all the cultural expressions and that people are using in ways of really opening up the learning process. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, following on that, I just that whole that's so beautiful to hear about the Indigenous scholars and those practices and all of that different way of knowing and being. My question is about how ecological concerns and the human earth connection, of course, there's eco-justice, there's eco-anxiety, there's just this awakening to how we really are all interconnected and responsible, and yet it's also very traumatic, this kind of waking up process to the direness of our situation, and obviously so embedded with other systems of oppression. So I'm just interested in how both in the teaching and in the research and in the larger societal work, what kind of, what's going on, what the inspirations are here.
Yeah, I think that question, Mary, you and I can talk for hours on just what's happening in that realm, right? But know that CMind remains committed to its ecological justice focus, remains committed to its social justice focus, and remains committed to higher education. And how that will materialize over the course of our time together is really determined by the community and the issues we raise that are of importance and what's going on in the global landscape, right, in terms of those issues. This isn't just an organization that focuses on this country, right? These issues are global issues, and we have to be mindful of that. And we have to start looking at things from that global perspective. So I'm looking forward to being in conversation with you about that. and ways that we can bolster our economic justice agenda at the intersection of all those others.
Hi, David. So great to see you again. I saw you in the summer session, and your talk was so inspiring. I'm feeling inspired by you again, so thank you. And among so many of the things you said, one of the things that deeply resonate with me are the words radical compassion. And one of the things I'm passionate about in higher education is leadership. I see so much burnout and pain, and just anger and despair, particularly, coming out of this pandemic. I'm currently in the role of chair, and it is deeply frustrating and just challenging, really, to find and see folks who, are brilliant and have so much to offer, but really not have the capacity to come to their work with compassion, and to see the harm that just, replicates over and over when that happens. And at my institution, which I'm glad Michelle raised the question, my institution is a minority serving institution with, 90% of the students are Black and brown, 60% of the faculty are white. And there are, of course, we're making moves to address issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And there seem to be a lot of movement to do leadership trainings and leadership institutes, that support folks opening their capacity, but not really thinking about it in a way that is deeply transformative, in a way that addresses systems of power, oppression, and privilege, in a way that addresses, individual accountability, and in a way that, is restorative, and in a way that builds capacity, right, for people to come with compassion. So I'm wondering, I see that there are opportunities for CMind to be engaged in that kind of work, and I'm wondering what you think about that.
I think hell yes. There are ways, deep ways for us to be engaged in that work, right? And as a person who worked in diversity, equity, and inclusion for a hospital system, right, I can tell you, actually, I worked in diversity and inclusion. There was no equity involved, which was something totally different. That the trainings, the types of trainings that we're now doing are not effective in helping people to understand that they have to transform as they transform the institution. Right, that's what we're dealing with. And so CMind, again, we are the place. We are the well, and we can be the water, right, to help folks to transform as they're transforming the institution. It has to happen simultaneously. Otherwise, it will not work. The other thing that I'm noticing, especially being a faculty member, right, is that when you go up for tenure, there's that little thing that's unmeasured called collegiality, right? How collegial have they been? Right? We don't ask how kind the person was to students. We ask, what did you do for your colleagues? Right? So there are some different, there's some ideas we need to infuse higher ed with that changes what we measure, how we measure it, because what you measure expands, right? And if I cannot convince you to be a good human being because you should be a good human being, then I'm going to measure your ass into being a good human being because that's what the institution requires, right? And I think again, we have to just be honest about the ground we're starting on. And it's not very solid, right? But it's there, and we got to start there. And if we can build from there in terms of what institutional mechanisms can help to catalyze a personal transformation, then we got to look at it that way. But I think there's a lot of work that CMind can do in a real way to help people begin to transform themselves as the institutions transform simultaneously, and hopefully in most cases. But if not, then the people need to transform and the institution won't have a choice, or they're gonna kick everybody out, right? And that's not gonna happen because they need to survive.
I think we will take Katya's comment next, and then I am going to move us to closing out this program for now. Katya?
Welcome, David.
Thank you.
And Michelle, I'm really moved. CMind has allowed me to do the best teaching ever and to be the best I could be. And it was such a wide landscape. And for years, I have really hoped that the landscape of faces and people would change. And here it is. And I'm bringing my commitment as a white person to continue working on this frigging white privilege, which is really an illness. And I hope that CMind can demonstrate how we work together and really keep us white folks on our toes and on our butts and do the work, and that we can bring that to the institutions as well. And I'm ready to continue doing the work, and welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, my dear Katya. So, rapid fire questions, and you answer what you want to answer, and then we'll take some closing breaths and call it a wrap for tonight.
Okay.
What's the perfect meal for David Robinson Morris?
Ooh, a perfect meal is a beef roast with smothered okra with shrimp and sausage, macaroni and cheese, a combination of collards and mustard greens, and cornbread.
Okay. I'm coming to your house for dinner, all right? What's your favorite way to spend a Sunday afternoon?
Ooh, reading.
Okay. You've won 2 free tickets to anywhere in the world. Where you going? Who you taking?
I am going to South Africa. I am taking, oh hell, who am I taking? I'm going to take you, Michelle.
Baby, you know, I'm saying he better say me. He better. If he's smart, that's the politically correct and safe thing to do. Okay, you're good. You can stick around. Okay, if you could invite anyone to happy hour, deceased or living, who would it be?
Ooh, anyone to happy hour? Ooh, that's a good question. Who would it be? It would probably be Toni Morrison.
Yeah, that's a good one. Okay. All right. Top 3 songs on your playlist right now.
Top 3 songs on my, I haven't listened to music. I like listen to NPR all day.
Oh my goodness. When we go to South Africa, we're going to listen to some music. Okay, dude? All right. And then what is some of the best advice you've ever received?
Some of the best advice I've ever received. Don't give advice, ask questions.
Don't give advice, ask questions.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll take that. That. And certainly don't give unsolicited advice.
Well,
ask you.
Well.
Friends, we want to thank you for being here. I have so many other questions, but we will get to those because we are a community, and David is available. He has stated his email. It's david@contemplativemind.org. I am docmchatman@gmail.org. See, they don't love me enough to give me a Contemplative Mind email, but that's okay. We'll talk about that another time. We thank you so much for spending some of your evening, some of your day, some of your life with us. We look forward to your engagement. We will be in touch with you. This organization needs you, and we need everybody to show up in a really different way and in a real way. That's what we need right now. So I'm so grateful for David's leadership. Can we all take a couple of breaths together as a community? Get ourselves centered in our beautiful bodies, the bodies that we have right now, not the bodies we wish we had, not the bodies we had 10 years ago, but the beautiful bodies that we have right now. Let's invite a deep, cleansing, restorative breath. And another. And because we can, another. My deep appreciation to you all. Welcome, Dr. David Robinson Morris. Onward.